Stop being afraid of what could go wrong and start getting excited about what could go right.
If you're focusing on problems, you will see more problems. If you focus on possibilities, you will see more opportunities. So focus on the possibilities and be ready for the opportunities that are coming in the future by doing the work now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this video on mind viruses. And I'm going to be sharing the part 3 of this, which is really focused on what happens when the mind steps into overwhelm. Overwhelm is this state of mind where you just get so in your head and you start to feel things so much. It becomes like you're inundated with so many emotions, so many thoughts, so many feelings, behaviors, memories of failure, memories of pain, memories of loss, all at the same time, just converging at one single moment. And when all of that happens, the mind starts to overprocess, starts to heat up just like a machine, and it starts to go back to a safety mechanism of choice. So in this video, I want you to really look at what overwhelm is doing to you as a mind virus. How does it show up in your life? So as you focus on this, I want you to look from different perspectives. And I try to go back to fundamentals of coaching, which is, what is it costing you? What is it costing you when you're in a state of overwhelm? Is it causing you a lot of stress? Is it causing you a lot of anxiety? Is there a lot of confusion? Is there panic? Is there even paranoia? Is there a compulsion that you have to do when you're in a state of overwhelm? Do you just become so overwhelmed that you procrastinate? Do you go all the way and then stop right at the end because you're overwhelmed by success or the fear of failure? What is overwhelm costing you? And then I also want you to look at what is the payoff of being in that state of overwhelm? What is the benefit of overwhelm? Does overwhelm keep you from taking personal responsibility? Does overwhelm keep you in a place where you are still in your status quo? You're still in a place of homeostasis. What is the overwhelm bringing about? Is it reinforcing some sort of story that you keep telling yourself? That maybe you're not good enough, or the world isn't safe, etc. What is it for you around overwhelm? So for a lot of people, it keeps them from taking any sort of decisive action. It keeps them from taking and making a decision and then acting upon it. It allows you to give your power and your authority over to someone else. It allows you to give yourself a reason why this isn't going to work, why you should never try. And I want you to see what type of emotions, what type of patterns, what type of behaviors start showing up the moment overwhelm begins in the mind. For a lot of people, overwhelm brings about a state of shock. It brings about a state of panic. It can even bring about a state of confusion. It can even bring paranoia. It can bring paralysis, the fight or flight experience. So we want to focus on what are some of the automatic patterns of thinking or focus that happens with overwhelm. For a lot of people, when overwhelm takes over, it renders that individual void of any choice, any freedom, or even self-expression. You'll notice that you become more constricted. You'll notice that your choices go down. Maybe you're overwhelmed with the choices you have, but you don't feel like you can make one. When you feel overwhelmed, your ability to be free, to live free, to have self-expression goes down. Now, what's the origins of this? Some of this can be instilled, through Pavlovian conditioning. Maybe we've just been in a state of overwhelm over and over and over, and we're just in this cycle, this habit, this pattern. Some of it is programmed overwhelm. Sometimes there's like a mass trauma that happens in society, and it just creates this state of overwhelm. And we get addicted to the overwhelm because it gives us something to talk about. This is why I highly advocate people unplug from certain things, unplug from the news if it's causing you a state of overwhelm and fear, unplug from social media if you're starting to get overwhelmed by seeing everyone else's success and comparing yourself and wondering why you don't have your own. Start to look at where this overwhelm is coming from. It can be instilled, programmed. It can even be learned behaviors from the parents or caregivers. Maybe you saw your mother getting overwhelmed as a child. Maybe you saw your father getting overwhelmed as a child. And you realized maybe this is helpful. It helps me get out of things. If I'm in a state of overwhelm, people leave me alone. Look at what it is costing you and look at what is the payoff for overwhelm. It's this perpetual state of having too much on your plate. And it reinforces these belief systems that I can't handle this. I can't get it done. It can even create a victim mentality of why does this keep happening to me? And there's a range of emotions that get coupled with this. And we started to talk a little bit about this, but I do want to touch on some of the emotions, because when the emotions get coupled with a thought, it becomes to feel like reality, even though that may not be the case. Now, you may have heard of this quote or this expression. I don't know who this is attributed to, but the quote says, no amount of anxiety can change the future. No amount of regret can change the past. So when people are in a place of overwhelm, they can be in a state of anxiety about the future. They can be in a state of regret about the past. And all of this is made up in the mind. And we want to dismantle those automatic recurring patterns, behaviors, and mechanisms that are happening there, and give yourself more of that authority and power back in your hands. So let's look at the first emotion that sometimes gets associated with overwhelm. There's a state of shock. And it's usually one of the first things that you experience right before you get overwhelmed. It's an overload. It's a quick overload, a short circuiting of the system. And many times this is where this is an emotion that's clearly associated with trauma. Right before a major traumatic event, you can't believe what you saw, you can't believe what happened, or you can't believe how something turned out. It's too much to handle. And this is a way that people rapidly wire in different self-sabotage mechanisms. This can actually keep people in a state of pain or learned helplessness. Traumas can actually be used for good if they're used in a proper way. We'll talk about that in another video. But for the most part, you may have only been familiar with traumas being used to keep yourself in a negative state. Another emotion that you might want to look at is panic. Panic is very closely associated with overwhelm, and it's this state of fear or terror. What's going to happen next? How do I get out of this? And there's a sense of like fear of pain that's going to be associated with panic. Another emotion that's closely tied to overwhelm is paranoia. And paranoia takes it a step further than panic. And paranoia is where you're constantly in this recurring state of fear of terror, fear of pain, fear of loss, fear of death. There's this fear that somebody's going to harm you. Somebody's going to come out to get you. Somebody's there to sabotage you. That things will perpetually go wrong. That everybody's working against your success. See how these thoughts and behaviors are very closely tied, and how they overtake the mind, and it becomes like a mind virus. And you have to notice it for yourself, where it starts, what's the origin point, how do I dismantle it? Overwhelm can also lead to obsessive compulsive behaviors. You start to feel overwhelmed. Now your mind tells you, I know how to keep myself safe. And in order to keep myself safe, we have to follow this set of rules, this set of patterns, take these behaviors, take these actions. I need to do this X number of times now in order to feel safe. And this is where the overwhelm leads to craving safety, and then it leads to a compulsive behavior in order to stop feeling this overwhelm. You also have a state of confusion. This is another emotion that gets closely tied to overwhelm. When you're in a state of overwhelm and you start to get so overwhelmed, sometimes your mind is trying to search for solutions. And in that search for solutions, what hypnosis calls transderivational search, where it's searching and searching and searching, and it's searching the recesses of the minds of the mind of how to resolve or how to bring solution to this endeavor or to this issue. This is where a state of confusion can happen. If you start to ask questions that constantly come up with a negative result, it's a constant state of asking questions that will never get resolved and will only further the hamster wheel of overwhelm. Why can't I get this done? Well, the brain is going to search for why you can't get it done. Why am I not good enough? And it's going to keep searching and searching. Or why does this keep happening to me? Why doesn't this happen to anyone else? The mind will keep searching and searching and trying to find patterns. It will try to find evidence. It will try to reinforce the story that it's been holding on to for dear life. This is where overwhelm meets confusion. Now, I just laid out a bunch of different emotional states that get closely coupled with and paired with that initial overwhelm. So start to look for yourself which ones are affecting you. Maybe there's some that I missed in this video, but start here. Look at, where does shock first happen? When does it get to that state of overwhelm where it's like, I have too much on my plate, I can't handle this? When do you get to a state of panic where there's a fear involved? When does it get to a state of confusion where you start wondering, can I do this? Can I not do this? How is this going to work? How many people do I have? Where is the results going to happen? Where are the opportunities? Oh my gosh, I can't get it done. And this state of confusion where there's so much sensory overload in questions. Then there's the paranoia, where you're constantly seeing, this person's out to get me, that person's out to get me. And this overwhelm can reinforce this paranoia. Trauma can reinforce this paranoia as well. You want to really look at where this can get dismantled. Try to find the origin, do some inner work. And I'm going to give you some questions to help you and assist you with the inner work. When you're looking at specific origins of overwhelm, look firstly, what incidents in your past hold up overwhelm? Where was the first time I felt this overwhelm? Where was the first time I felt confusion? Where was the first time I felt paranoia, panic, shock? Where was the first time I felt all of this? And more often than not, there is an association with some sort of pain or an absence or void of love. So try to use that to help you find where the overwhelm began. Then, like I said, start to ask yourself, what is it costing you? What is it costing you to live in this state of overwhelm? Is there a perpetual fear? Do you live in a state of fight or flight? Are your endorphins going off in the wrong way? Is there an adrenaline rush all the time? Are you constantly living in that state of paranoia and just fear, and it's just overwhelming you? Are you having panic attacks? Are there compulsive behaviors because of this overwhelm? Look at how this mind virus is affecting you. Every time you get overwhelmed, do you just stop doing all work because you're overwhelmed? You get nothing done? Where is it? What is it costing you? Is it costing you your health when you get overwhelmed? I just can't get overwhelmed, otherwise I'm just going to go back to the hospital, or I'm going to go sick again. What is it costing you to live in this state of overwhelm? Then you want to look at, what's the payoff? is the third part. So the first part was what incidents are holding up this mind virus of overwhelm and those associated emotions. Second part was what is it costing you? And the third part is what is the payoff? Somewhere there's a payoff. You're getting something out of the state of overwhelm. Maybe it's less work, less responsibility. Maybe it's getting to get away from confrontation. What is this overwhelm causing you? Find that out for yourself. This is what I call doing the inner work. And once you've done the inner work, you've looked at the incidents, the originating incidents that are holding up this pattern, this behavior, and you've looked at what is it costing me, and you've looked at what is the payoff. Now it's time to make a choice. Do I want to keep living this way, or do I want to choose some other pattern of living? Do I want to choose something a little more healthy for me, one where I don't feel as stressed? And if you're ready, then it's time to do the outer work. Now I'm going to lay out some questions for you to do the outer work. One step that I recommend when you're doing the outer work, when it comes to the outer work of overwhelm, get yourself out of your head. Part of the overwhelm process, it all starts in the head and it stays there. So in order to get yourself out of your brain, out of your mind, begin by taking pen to paper. Get a pen, get some paper, and just start writing. What am I overwhelmed about? And a lot of times you'll notice that your mind is writing down fears, it's writing down worries, regret, anxieties. I don't want it to be like this, like it was in the past. I really hope this doesn't happen. You might even start to find yourself writing a to-do list of all the things that you know to do, but you haven't done yet. Try to note down why the overwhelm happens. So I notice for me, when I have too many things to do, I start to get into a place of overwhelm. But what I've done now is I've corrected myself by emptying my overwhelmed mind onto paper. This is an overwhelm release, a physical overwhelm release. Just start writing and writing and writing until there's nothing more to write. And once you do that, you've now gotten it onto paper. Now I want you to do part two, which is to quietly reflect. This is where you still the mind. In NLP and hypnotherapy, they talk about the monkey mind. So you want to slow it down. In Eastern philosophy, they call this meditation, where you're breathing slowly and you're reflecting, right? So you want to do quiet reflection time. Just quiet reflection time. Just breathing deeply in and out. In and out. And just slowly focusing your breath, focusing your mind to slow down. And start to ask yourself questions like, is this thing I'm overwhelmed about? Is this in my control? Ask yourself, how is this affecting my energy, my thoughts, my emotions, my behavior, my self-respect, my self-esteem and self-confidence? How is this affecting me as a whole? And start asking yourself this over and over again when this comes up. With everything that you have on your list, just take them one at a time. Overwhelmed with buying groceries, overwhelmed with paying bills, overwhelmed with taking the kids to daycare, overwhelmed with getting my car tires rotated, overwhelmed with paying my taxes. Just start writing all these things down and asking yourself these questions. Is this within my control? How is this affecting me? How is this affecting my energy, my thoughts, my emotions, my behavior, my self-respect, my self-confidence, my self-esteem? Then ask yourself the third question, which is, am I willing to let this go? Whatever this is. This could be shock, it could be pain, it could be fear, it could be guilt, anxiety. Am I willing to let this go? If so, what actions could I take? In the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, one of the revised versions, Psycho-Cybernetics 2000, Chuck Norris actually writes down one thing he does is he will write down the thing that he's afraid of on an index card, and he will light it on fire and just watch the ashes burn. And mentally, it is training his mind that he has control over the thoughts and the feelings that are coming up. This is a very powerful exercise. And obviously, do this in a safe manner. Don't come to me if you burn your house down. I didn't tell you to do that, but do this responsibly. But it does help to write everything down and to destroy what is written down, to show yourself that you have more authority, more power than what is occupying your mental real estate. Then you also want to ask yourself questions like, what would it be like to be fully present in this moment, free of all worries, all regrets, all anxiety, free of all fear, free of all panic, free of all paranoia, free of all these compulsions, free of all this shock and terror? What would that be like? Start to ask yourself what life would be like to be free of all these things. And you even want to see if that payoff that you were getting from all that overwhelm is worth more to you than being free of this. You might notice some things. You might notice there's some advantages and disadvantages to the overwhelm, and even being free, advantages and disadvantages to being free of it. And start to ask yourself questions like, can I allow myself to be free of this for just a moment? Can I allow myself to be free of this for just a moment longer? Build some muscle with being free of these patterns of overwhelm. And I pay very close attention to how I'm phrasing these words, because there is power in the words that I'm using. Can I allow myself to be free of this for just a moment or for a moment longer? Am I willing to behave with freedom from the past and the future stressors? The past and present and future stressors. Am I willing to behave with freedom from these past, present, or future stressors? Can I give myself permission to let this go? Are there any steps I need to take to fully heal and be free of this stressor? So I hope this video has helped you. If it has, please either message or put a comment on these videos of where it's posted, and give me some feedback of how this video has helped you. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.